Welcome back to Pan Am Football with Max Dean. Today, guys, we are going to be doing a topic that I've been waiting to do for quite a while. I'm excited to run through it all with you, and that is going to be how to fix the New Orleans Saints salary cap situation. So, before I get started, I want to shout out a thank you, as always, to overthecap.com and spotrac.com, as that is where I get all of my contract information. And if you like what you see, hit subscribe and throw down a like, because we are going to be doing a lot more of this, as well as basically totally revamping Pan Am Football as a YouTube channel and podcast. We are doubling down on everything. So if you have any requests on topics like this, throw it in the comments or throw it at us in email or on Twitter or anywhere like that, and I will do my best to get to it. I want to jump right in today because it's a lot to go over. And so I don't want to run too long, so I'm going to try and be efficient and still explain everything. Now, the way that we're going about doing this is, I think that anybody can just run through and just say, okay, cut him, and so on and so forth, until you get down below the salary cap. However, what I really want to do is get below the salary cap while maintaining the best possible roster. And so we're going to be looking at who's going, who's staying, how we're going to be restructuring players, and why we're going to be restructuring players. And so hopefully that will give you guys a good idea of how the team will look. Now, obviously, the Saints may not do everything that I'm saying exactly how I'm saying it, but simply because they have such a deficit in cap space, they don't have a ton of options. Okay, so we're going to run through everything, and here we go. I've done this all in advance. It was a lot of fun, and I don't think we'll ever see another situation where a team has so many players that have to be transacted basically to achieve salary cap compliance. So the Saints are over the salary cap projection by about $94.6 million. That is a huge number. I believe that this is taking into account the $185 million salary cap that has been speculated around. They have to get down to basically negative. They have to get down to about, I want to say, like a couple of million below the salary cap at absolute minimum, hopefully with a little bit more buffer there. So the first thing that we have to do here is look at Drew Brees. They've already transacted Drew Brees, actually. I just wanted to start before that because it gives you an idea of where they are as a team. Brees has a $31.15 million cap hit, but they basically reduced his salary to the veteran minimum. He currently has a $25 million salary and a total cap hit of $36.15 million, as you can see there. Now, what they've done basically implies that he's going to retire. It is possible that he could re-sign a different contract with a higher salary or some such thing, but this points to him retiring, and the reason for that is that if he retired right now, they would have $22.65 million in dead money, because it would include the prorated bonus for 2021, and it would also accelerate the prorated bonus for 2022 and 2023. So all of that money would hit this year. And they can't afford that. They can't afford a $22.65 million cap hit for a Drew Brees that's not on the team anymore. However, they can't keep him on the team because he has that $36 million cap hit as it stands. So they have to find a way to lower the cap hit and still keep him on the team until he can retire later in the year. So what they've done is they've lowered his base salary to $1,075,000. That's the veteran minimum. It's as low as it can possibly go. What that does is it lowers his cap hit to $12,225,000, and then they can keep him on the team at that cap hit until after June 1st. If you have a player on the team until after June 1st and then you release him, then you don't get the same accelerated effect in the proration. So you would keep the $11,150,000 this year, but the remaining proration would accelerate into 2022, which allows the team to basically put off some of that dead money into a year where they're not going to be so hard up. So now we can look at what the team looks like with that transaction enacted. Drew Brees now has a $12,225,000 cap hit, and their total cap space has improved to only over the cap by about $70.7 million. Now, that's still a huge number, and the reason I'm pretty confident that that means he's going to retire is, A, it's what I think, but also it's what other salary cap people who are even more knowledgeable than me were saying was going to happen beforehand. That would be like Jason Fitzgerald with over the cap, or Joel Corey with inside the cap with CBS. So that's the only thing they have done so far. So basically, everything else is up to us. So the first thing we really need to do is look at luxury positions, because the more you restructure, the more you push down the line. The more you push down the line, the less flexibility you give yourself in future years. And so that's the reason that I have the total cap space for this year as well as 2022 and 2023. I didn't include 2024 because 3 years out, it almost doesn't really matter that much. I've just included a few cap hits for some of the bigger players just so you see what they look like down the line. Anywhere that you see a yellow number, that means that it is dead money as a result of a void type contract. And if you want to hear more about that, I don't want to spend time on it right now, but I talk about it in the Ben Roethlisberger video I made. But basically, it just means that a team has added a year to the end of a contract to help with spacing out proration, but it's built into void, which means the contract was never intended to actually keep the player on the team at that point, just to push money to the future a little bit. Okay. And if a lot of people do have questions about that, I can make a shorter video specifically about voids. And anywhere that you see red, it, aside from in the total cap space column, anywhere you see red will be regular dead money as a result of a trade or a cut or retirement. And then anywhere you see a blank space, it just means the player is no longer on the team at that point. So, for example, Teron Armstead is not under contract for 2022 and beyond. We're going to be looking at positions like run stuffing tackle, running back, off-ball linebacker, and some highly paid special teams players. Anything that we can do to free up space without affecting premium positions. Now, Quan Alexander is going to be the first to go. He's an off-ball linebacker, and he was traded for in the midst of the season in an attempt to make a deep Super Bowl run in what they probably knew was Drew Brees' final year. Because he was traded for, he has no dead money, and all $13.212 million is going to come straight off the books when he is released. So as you can see, the cap space is getting better and better. That was by far the easiest one that we're going to do. A player over $13 million who has no dead money. That's easy peasy, but it's going to get a little bit more complicated as we go. Next up, we are going to cut the punter Thomas Morstead. It's going to save $2.5 million off of his current $4.5 million cap hit. He does have a little bit of dead money, and I would cut Will Lutz as well, the kicker, but he just doesn't free up enough space to make it worthwhile. He still has too much, he has a little bit of guaranteed money left, as well as a substantial amount of prorated money. So let's cut Morstead. Next, we're going to be looking at defensive tackle Malcolm Brown. He's primarily a run defending tackle, and we can save basically $5 million by releasing him. Next up, we have Latavius Murray. He's been a nice backup, but with what you're paying Alvin Kamara, you cannot be paying a backup running back as much as he's getting. So we're going to release him, and we're going to save about $2.5 million on his contract as well. So now we're going to attempt to trade Nick Easton. I would whatever you can get for him works. If you can't, if people don't want to take on his salary, it doesn't really matter that much because it makes no difference. He's a player that somebody might trade a late round pick for, but if not, you're just going to cut him. So financially, it doesn't make a difference. If you can recuperate a pick, then great. But otherwise, he's just on the waiver wire. Easton brings back $5,875,000 in available space, so we're now down to $41 million. And we've gotten to the point where we can't just rampantly cut players anymore because they are too good, and they're too good or they won't really save much money compared to the value that they bring by still being here. And we're going to have to look at a couple of high-profile players, and those would be the Saints' first-round picks from, I believe, 2017. And that's cornerback Marshawn Lattimore and right tackle Ryan Ramcheck. So, in my opinion, you're probably going to need to trade one and extend the other. So, just in deciding which one to do, I think, personally, I would love to keep the offensive line together as much as humanly possible. Ramcheck is one of the best right tackles in football, and he is just in his mid-20s. He's just really entering his prime. I want to keep him around. Tackle is generally going to have less injury risk and less volatility in terms of production as a player than cornerback is. And we've seen Marshawn Lattimore play very well, but we've also seen some up and down play over the few years that he's been here. I don't know if you would get a wildly different trade package for either one. And the other thing is that the cornerback market is a bit higher than the right tackle market is. So you're also going to spend a little bit less on the player. I genuinely believe that you would get a first-round pick for Marshawn Lattimore. There are enough teams that might be interested in that. I'm not saying they all would that I'm about to list, but I imagine that you can probably get something done with one of these teams, whether it be the Raiders or the Cardinals, or who else might be in. I mean, the Colts might want to do it. I know that the Patriots love themselves a cornerback. They might be in on it. There are enough teams that I believe you could get that, especially when you see a guy like Ramsey going for 2 first-round picks plus. I think even though you don't have a lot of leverage because teams know you need to get rid of him by a certain date, you could probably get a first-round pick back for him. So we're going to move him, and that clears up all of his cap hit because he was on a 5th-year option, meaning that 100% of his contract was in salary form, which means 100% of that cap hit moves on to the other team. So you've recuperated a first-round pick now. You have 2 first-round picks. And yes, you've weakened your secondary substantially, but you've also taken a nice chunk out of your salary cap deficit. Now we're going to continue to look at the secondary. We're going to look at Janoris Jenkins. Now, I don't want to totally tear down the secondary. We've moved our best secondary player. And Janoris Jenkins is a good player. And he's got only 2 years left on his contract. And 14.2 is a little high. But rather than just cutting him outright, let's restructure him. Currently, his base salary is $10 million, and his roster bonus is $1.2 million. And you can take the majority of that and convert it into a signing bonus. And what I would also like to do is add a void year. Now, the Saints love void years. They have void years all over the place. So this is something they would definitely be amenable to doing. So you would take everything aside from the veteran minimum for his salary and all of his roster bonus and convert it into a signing bonus and add the void year. So you would basically spread out all of the rest of that money over the 3 years. So it would look like this. Down to $1.075 million as the base salary, and then the prorated bonus split 3 years brings his cap hit down from $14.2 million to $7.45 million. It doesn't really change anything about his contract, to be honest, from the Saints' perspective, except that it pushes his cap hit in 2022 a little bit higher. And it also adds some potential dead money in 2023, albeit not that much. It's not something you want to do a ton of, but the Saints don't really have any other option at this point. And that saves $6.75 million on the cap this year. Next, we're going to look at extending Ryan Ramcheck. So I'll give you a little bit of my thought process behind getting a deal done with him. Currently, like Marshawn Lattimore, he's on his 5th-year option, which means all of his salary, all of his cap hit is just located in the base salary, and it's just over $11 million as it stands. Now, what we want to do is extend him for, say, 4 years, pretty average amount of time. You might prefer to do more as the Saints. However, because you don't have a lot of time to get all of the negotiations done, you may have to give up certain things like a longer contract and just go with the 4 years. You're not going to get him at any kind of discount. He's probably going to hold you over the fire a little bit, but I'm going to try and make it as reasonable of a contract as possible. Looking at the top 5 players at the right tackle position and their salaries, I think that ordinarily Ramcheck would have bested the right tackle mark. But the thing is that Lane Johnson, he's really been paid as a left tackle, even though he plays right tackle, because the Eagles essentially knew that if he hit free agency, he would get paid as a left tackle somewhere. He was the 4th overall pick one year, I believe, so he had the talent to do that. And they wanted to maintain their offensive line, so they paid him left tackle money and kept him at right tackle, and then later drafted a left tackle to play a little bit cheaper. There is a difference between left and right tackle markets. You can see that Orlando Brown has recently requested a trade from the Ravens to go play left tackle. Is it because he cares about which side of the line he plays on? No, it's because he knows that when he's up for an extension, which is this year, he wants to get paid as a left tackle, not as a right tackle. They make more. So Ramcheck will probably best the top true right tackle, which would be Trent Brown. So I'm going to clock him in at $16.75 million per year. So he beats out everybody except for Lane Johnson in this case. And I think that's reasonable for him to ask for. And, he might be able to bump it up to $17 million per year. But we're going to go with $16.75 for this contract. What we're looking at here is a hypothetical 4-year extension worth $16.75 million per year. So what we've done is we've taken his salary in 2021 and lowered it to the veteran minimum for a player who has played as many years as he has. So 990,000, I believe, is the correct number. We've given him a $15 million signing bonus, which stretches over the 4 years of extension, as well as this year of the 5th-year option. Because the signing bonus was handed out this year, it affects all 5 years, even though it was done during the negotiations for the extension. And then some of these numbers don't necessarily matter that much. I mean, they could be different in a bunch of ways, but really what we're looking at is totals here. And I'm trying to show you what's possible to extend him and simultaneously keep his salary cap hit fairly low. In 2021, you would have a $3.99 million cap hit in this scenario. I doubt you could really go any lower than that, but that's basically at $4 million. So you've brought him down from just over 11 to just under 4 and saved about $7 million this year alone. You also have one of the best right tackles in the league under lock and key for the next 5 years going forward. So you can see what his cap hits would be in this situation. You could play with that a little bit, whatever you wanted to do. I just tried to give you something that I thought was realistic to get that kind of deal done. So we have taken a huge chunk out of the Saints deficit at this point, and we're looking at $17.6 million over the cap right now. And now we're going to look at restructuring some of our other superstar players. And the reason that I'm jumping straight to that instead of cutting players who would save $1 million here and $1 million there is because, frankly, doing this, it's the only way that you can take chunk sums out of that deficit and still have a substantial number of players still under contract. If you want to get down, if you want to cut off $17.6 million by cutting players who are, saving you $1 million here or $1.5 million there, you are going to have basically nobody left to field a remotely competitive roster. Do I love the idea of restructuring 2 of your highest paid players? Not really, no, I don't. But it's the only way that 2021 is not a total dumpster fire. And we're going to start with a player that I'm more comfortable restructuring. That is Cam Jordan. So Jordan's current contract looks just like this. It does have a void year. You can see down there that his contract will void going into 2024, but he still has a little bit of dead money left there. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert his base salary and his roster bonus into a signing bonus, just with the exception of his minimum, his veteran minimum. And we're going to look at what that will do to his cap hits this year and in the future. So we brought his base salary down to $1.075 million. It increases the prorated bonus numbers over the next 4 years. And he will be very hard to cut until 2023. You can cut him in 2023. Probably you would just have to do a June 1 cut, most likely. But Cam Jordan has been just a phenomenal player. He was still very good this year. And he's also been like a pillar of the community there. He's one of those guys that's a Saint for life, even if he plays his last couple of years elsewhere. So I trust him to produce in 2021 and 2022. And even if I have to do something in 2023, we can do a post-June 1 cut or maybe even trade him and figure that out. So I'm a little bit more comfortable doing it with him. But by doing that, you will save about $9.5 million just in that one move. As you can see, we're down under $10 million over the cap, which is really, really nice. And looking forward, if you've been keeping up, in 2022, you're projected at $44.7 million in space. And 2023, you have tons of space. You have nothing to worry about. You'll be building half a new team by that point. But the main thing I'm looking at here is making sure I'm not killing myself in 2022 just to get through 2021. So let's take a look at Michael Thomas because, again, it's the only chunk move that we can do without just slicing and dicing players down the line. So Thomas has a base salary of $12.6 million, and that's basically it aside from that workout bonus there. We're not going to bother touching that. We're going to leave that alone. And we're just going to convert as much as possible from the base salary there into a signing bonus, which again, like Cam Jordan, will bring up the prorated bonus over the next 4 years. And basically, the reason I don't really like this is because, unlike Cam Jordan, Michael Thomas had a pretty rough year this year. And you are absolutely hoping for a bounce back from him. The reason that I am doing this and not just leaving him alone and removing other players is that would basically force you to cut Emmanuel Sanders, because I think you could save around $4 million with him, and that would help. But at that point, you're relying exclusively on Michael Thomas to be your guy, and if he's not, like if he has a year even anything like he had this year, then you can't have him being your only real veteran presence as a receiver. So I would rather take a little bit of a risk, lower Thomas's cap hit this year, and keep Emmanuel Sanders around, and strengthen the wide receiver locker room, than to, I guess, leave that little extra flexibility next year. But yeah, so anyway, let's get it done. So we've brought his base salary down to $990,000. Again, it increases his prorated bonus. We've added a void year just to space it out a little bit more. There's really no issue with doing that. You're guaranteeing that he's going to be on the roster through 2022, even if he has an absolutely abysmal year, which I don't necessarily expect, but I would be a little bit afraid of. If that happens, what are you going to do? You put yourself in this situation and you're going to have to bite the bullet somewhere. And this is the move that I'm the least excited about, but still, in my opinion, has to get done. You would also be hard pressed to cut him, or you would have a hard time cutting him in 2023. You could do a June 1 cut then as well, but it would hurt, because if that were to be the case, he probably would not have been that good this year. You know what I mean? So you're going to have to eat a couple of years of poor play. And anyway, long story short, you save $9.288 million against the cap this year. So guys, we've done it. We have gotten down underneath the salary cap for the 2021 season. And if you look at it, we really haven't just shredded the roster that much. We cut Quan Alexander. That's no big loss. He's a fine player, but he wasn't a big part of the team anyway. We've cut Nick Easton. We've cut Malcolm Brown. We've cut Thomas Morstead and Latavius Murray. Sheldon Rankins there, he had a void year built in, so he was already gone. I just included him because he had a higher dead money hit as a result of that. And we have a lot of players still left on the team. And what I'm going to do quickly is look at the depth chart for the Saints as it stands after the moves we've made. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because we're not quite done. And $1.2 million is under the salary cap. It's cap compliant, but it's not enough to where we can make a couple of moves that we need to make. We need a little bit more flexibility than that. So there are obvious strengths with this depth chart and obvious weaknesses here. Okay, so first off, we are looking at our offensive line. That is still one of the best offensive lines in the entire league. You got Ryan Ramcheck locked down. You got Cesar Ruiz under 3 more years of rookie contract plus a 5th-year option if necessary. You've got Eric McCoy for a couple of more years. Andres Pete for probably 1 more year that you would want to keep him. Then you'd probably want to move on and do something cheaper. But he's under contract for a while. And then Teron Armstead is the one guy who's only under contract for this year. But I just don't think it's realistic to get extensions done with both tackles this offseason. And I want to get done the one with the player who's entering his prime in his mid-20s. And what I'm going to do is kind of hang tight with Teron Armstead for now and see what we can get done maybe later in the offseason, in the summertime, see what we can do going forward. Looking at the receiver core, not bad, really. Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. Then you've got some depth in Marcus Callaway, Deontay Harris, Traquan Smith, little Jordan Humphrey. The tight end room could use some work. Adam Troutman's the only real guy there. And, he's young. They traded up to get him, if I remember right, so they must like it. But hard to project that. So I would like to improve the tight end position at some point. The running back room is empty. Now, you're just going to add guys for, either late round draft picks or vet minimum, because that's really all you can afford to put around Alvin Kamara. You just got to hope that he is very healthy this year, because he's expensive. He only has a $5 million cap hit this year, but he's overall very expensive, and you're going to be top heavy at that position. Looking down at interior defensive line, David Onyemata is an excellent defensive tackle, so I'm glad that we were able to keep him. We didn't have to trade him, didn't have to cut him, didn't have to do anything like that. Is the depth a little bit weak? Yes, but we can address that later in the offseason. Looking at edge, you still have Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport. The big loss there could potentially be Trey Hendrickson, but I just don't think that there's any way that you can afford him. You're just going to have to watch him walk in free agency. Now, I could be wrong. They may try and get something done. I just don't think it's realistic. You're already so top-heavy as it is with expensive players that to do that, you just have to cut all of those middle-range veteran guys and become even more top-heavy. I don't think it makes sense for them. Linebackers, Zach Bond and Demario Davis coming back. Alex Anzalone is a free agent. I would say peace, have fun in free agency. He is terrible in coverage. Sure, there's nothing wrong with the person. I have no idea. Don't mean to sound callous, but there's no way that we're spending money to bring him back. That leaves the weak side position a little bit empty, especially since you cut Quan Alexander. But I think that we can probably find somebody for a very low price tag to come in and fill that role. Or if you need him to take over the middle linebacker position and slide Demario Davis back to weak side where he's been before, you can do that. In the secondary, we lost Marshawn Lattimore, but we were able to keep Janoris Jenkins, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Patrick Robinson, which is nice. It's really nice to be able to have all of those guys because they all play a significant role. I would have been fine with moving on from Malcolm Jenkins. I wish they did not make that signing in the offseason. He doesn't really save any money, and he's older, and basically I think paying Malcolm Jenkins last offseason has now prohibited you from signing back Marcus Williams, who is a very good free safety. I just don't know how you make that work. Marcus Williams will command a pretty sizable contract, and I just don't think that you can afford to sign him in time. The Saints can do stuff after they've gotten through the first day of the new league year because things start to ease up in terms of their flexibility. But if you want to keep Marcus Williams, you're going to have to do it before then. And so the issues that I'm looking at and seeing here in terms of the roster construction are linebacker, we could use a bit more. Secondary, we could use a bit more. And then quarterback is not acceptable. We cannot have this going forward at quarterback. So we have to figure something out there. My solution, trade for Sam Darnold. I would trade the 28th overall pick for him. You're not going to be able to trade a second-round pick for him because somebody with a higher second-round pick will make that move for sure. So you already have an extra first-round pick from trading away Marshawn Lattimore, which will probably be a bit higher. And so trade the 28th overall pick for Sam Darnold. Why? Because you're not going to get a quarterback in the draft who's going to be as talented, and you've got to do something. You're not going to get Jameis Winston at cheaper than this, I would imagine. I just don't know what else the Saints can do other than just wait, other than just like sit with Taysom Hill. It doesn't make any sense. It was an experiment, and I don't think that it worked. So Sam Darnold has a base salary of $920,000 and a roster bonus of $3,854,685, and that gives him a cap hit of about 4.77 million. He's on the 5th year of his rookie deal, so he only has 1 year left. So I say you got to get a quarterback. If you take this calculated risk and it works, it is going to be the best deal anyone has made for a franchise quarterback in a long time. And I think the Saints are in a position where what else can they do? So if you trade for Sam Darnold, what I would also do is pick up his 5th year option. People all over seem to be saying something about $25 million for his 5th year option. That's not the case. The 5th year option, it varies depending on what qualifications the player has met. And Sam Darnold has met playing time qualifications, but not like Pro Bowl qualifications. And you can find 5th year projections for all of the players who will be eligible this offseason at overthecap.com. I will try to remember to post a link to that in the description of the video if you want to go find that. But his projected salary cap hit as a 5th year option would be $18,749,000. And I would do that because it's part of the gamble of trading for him. If you do this, you can look at this and basically say this is a 2-year contract worth $11.75 million per year, and you've just backloaded the contract a little bit. It would be fully guaranteed if you did this, but I think that it's worth it. I really, really do. If he plays well in the Saints system, you would have to franchise tag him. And if that were to be the case, then you would be looking at 20 plus million. And so this just gives you an opportunity to have a lower cap hit. If you need to extend him after this year, who knows? But I don't think it would be a good move to trade a 1st round pick for him and then only have him under contract for 1. That did put us back over the cap limit again, but now that frees us up to get rid of Taysom Hill. To me, Taysom Hill needs to be out of here. He saves $5 million if he's just cut outright, but I would look to anybody in the league to trade for him. I mean, I would say trade. If someone will give you, I mean, whatever they'll give you, the better, obviously. But if it comes down to it, trade him away for a conditional 7th round pick. You know, you can probably word it to say it's a conditional 7th round pick, and the conditions are so unlikely to be met that you're basically just giving him to another team. But what this does is it allows you to walk away from his guaranteed salary. And if I were the Saints, frankly, to just get out from under this, I would send a future pick if I needed to. They don't really have many picks this year, but I would send a future 5th round pick just to get Taysom Hill's guaranteed money off of this contract. So if you can get that done, if you can swing that, and literally just anything you can get for him, even if it's nothing or giving up slightly in the future, you can save $12 million, just over $12 million by moving on from him. So now that puts us over the cap at a healthy $8.597 million in space. Looking into the future with the moves that I have laid down, you're looking at $23 million in space. But you can also, you'll be making moves next offseason to free up a little bit more space when things aren't so crazy. That leaves enough space for you this year to sign any draft picks. Once Drew Brees retires, you'll get another $1 million back on top of that. So I think this is a comfortable place to be for the Saints, and I don't think they've had to give up too many prominent players on their roster. I think that, if you draft well, you might be looking to draft a corner, I would imagine. But if you draft well, that leaves you the opportunity to be genuinely competitive this year. Maybe not for a Super Bowl, but maybe a playoff push. Just looking back at the depth chart, I'm going to leave this here for you for a minute so you can just look it over. If you're Saints fans, see how happy you are with it. You have a first-round pick still. You have a second-round pick still. Once the draft is over, you can cut some guys who didn't really save you any money if you cut them now, but after June 1st would save you a bit more. That could give you the opportunity to sign a player in a position that you need a bit more desperately. You will probably just be looking at filling in some of this with veteran minimum guys. But you have one of the best offensive lines in the league. You have a solid receiver unit. You have a young quarterback who you're taking a flyer on. Your front seven is not bad at all. It's not great, but if you really like the way that your team looks in training camp, and you're like, we need a dude, we need a defensive tackle in here, or we need a cornerback in here now that the draft is over, and you want to trade a future pick for it, you can do those kinds of things then. But this gets you to where you need to be at the first of the league year, to be salary cap compliant and to be flexible enough to make some moves. So guys, let me know what you think about what I've done here. Let me know if you think it's a competitive roster. Let me know if you didn't understand anything that I did along the way. And have a great night. I need to go to bed because it is now after 2 in the morning.